All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another day of SaberSim's DFS office hours. It is Friday, January 13th of 2023. Spooky Friday the 13th. Just having some fun with that today. But for those of you who are new here, welcome. My name is Andrew. I'm one of the coaches over here at SaberSim. This is a show where we go over how to use the SaberSim app, answer any and all DFS related questions that come in the office hours channel over in our Discord server. If you're not a member of our Discord, there's a link in the description below to get joined up. Highly recommend it. As always, a lot of good DFS conversations happening over there in the sport specific channels. Get in on the action and get your questions answered. We run this show Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern. You can put questions in the office hours channel anytime you guys think of them. Leave them in there and I will get to them on the next show. That gets us a solid queue of questions to get us started as people tune in and as people ask more live questions. If you guys are just tuning in, have questions, throw them in the YouTube chat. We will get to everything before the end of the show. Promise you all that. Looking ahead, what do we got going on today in the DFS streets? Looks like we got a 9-game NBA slate, a 3-game NHL slate. I know people are sweating the cut for golf this week. This is the first golf event with a cut. Last week was a no cut. So it should be a sweaty Friday for some people. Good luck. Good luck in your round 2 showdowns. If you guys are playing showdown golf, showdown will run all weekend. Got NFL on a Saturday. Kicking off Saturday, got games on Sunday, got a game on Monday. So a lot of NFL action coming at you over the weekend. If you have been participating in our weekly max challenge, you should have gotten an email from our support team. Our end of the season free roll, $5,000 prize pool with $1,000 going to first place is going to be taking place on Sunday. It will be taking place on Sunday for the 3-game slate happening just on that day. No Saturday games, no Monday game. So if you guys have not heard from us, reach out to support@sabersim.com. Shoot me a message here in the chat. I will make sure that you guys get in contact, but I know the team has been hard at work making sure everybody is aware of all of the prizes they've won, aware of the free roll, and making sure everybody gets any swag that they are due. So be on the lookout, check your email for any messages coming from the team over here. But just wanted to remind everybody of that. And I am going to get SaberSim pulled up here, and we are going to get rocking and rolling. So just a couple questions to get us going here. So if you guys have questions, now is always a good time to get them in the queue. First question here from Luke Diesel said, what's the difference or what's the point of changing min uniques if it doesn't carry over to late swap? Luke, this is a good question, right? This is a, we released the min uniques. We were really excited about it. Kind of like during football season, things like that. We didn't really think too much about the late swap, but it is something that we have been working diligently on with our late swap pools. If anybody is interested in trying out our late swap pools, they are available over at beta.sabersim.com. Still a little buggy, which is why it is over on the beta. For anybody using it, if you guys do run into issues, please use the report a problem link and let us know what the issue is so we can fix it, so we can ultimately get it off of the beta version and into the live SaberSim app. What the late swap pools are going to allow you to do is, instead of rebuilding each lineup one time, not being able to change min uniques, not being able to change min and max exposures, you are going to be able to do all of those things very similarly to how you do it in the pre-build. That will allow for the min uniques. That will allow for tweaks to your lineup. It will not just be rebuilding each lineup one time. So definitely something we are aware of, Luke, and something we are addressing and hoping to have that live very, very soon here. My best guess is hopefully within the next few weeks. But good question. And, if you're not using beta.sabersim, check it out. I would say be careful using it, really, really close to the next game's start time. Issues can happen. That's why it's not in the live app. So, keep a tab open with regular SaberSim, or just be ready to switch back if you guys run into any trouble and time is getting short on you. And if that does happen, please circle back and report a problem and tell us what was going on. So thank you all. All right. question here in the YouTube chat says, hey, Andrew, is there a way to set a rule to only have one player only at their salary? Example, only one player at 2,700. Thanks. Okay, this sounds like a question for NFL or like Showdown. So can you let me know what this is for exactly? And then I can hover over to the sport and then we can talk about it. So just give me a little more detail, like a sport. Give me like a team example where I could find somebody 2,700 and we can figure that out. I know on DraftKings NBA lowest salaries is 3,000, so it doesn't sound like it's for that sport specifically. But any extra details will be helpful there. All right, we have a little time today, so I wanted to talk about this question from Elder. Elder told me I didn't have to talk about it on stream because Shady Advice was nice enough to jump in and give him a lot of feedback. But I think this is an interesting conversation, and we have a little bit of extra time today, so I am going to capture this here. So Elder said, "How should I?" Okay, before I do this, got some more information from Fahad here. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. This is for NHL. So if I'm going to go over to NHL and I am going to say, is there a way to set a rule to only have one player only at a salary, example, one player at 2,700? So what I want to do here, I'm not a huge NHL guy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sort by salary and then I'm going to go down here. So if I wanted to set a rule, what I would probably do is do a group rule. And then I think you could do this two ways. So it's going to say use exactly one. And then I am going to add a stat requirement. And then I'm going to say salary. I think there should be an exactly here. So I think that, what you're looking for is there's a greater than or less than. But unfortunately, there is no exactly. So it doesn't sound like we can do it that specific way. What I would do is I would just do a group manual rule. I would use exactly one. And then I would just check in these players, right? There's only a couple of them. So I would just come in here and grab these 7 players. So some extra context. I only want 1 point at 2,700, not 2 points at the same price point at 2,700. I only want 1 player. So this is exactly what I would do. So Or what you could even do is say use no more than. This is a little more flexible. So what I would just say is use no more than 1 player, and then I would just check all of the players that are exactly 2,700. If you are saying you don't want more than 1 player below 2,700, then you can do that with an automatic rule where you don't have to check these guys in. So for an exactly type salary rule, use manual and come and check, the players in. There's not going to be that many. So this is 7, right? So this is one way I would do it. If you say I don't want more than 1 player below 2,700, I would then do that as a group automatic rule. I would say use no more than 1, and then I would come in here and then I would say salary less than, and then I would just do 2,800. That way a 2,700 person could be chosen, right? This is not less than or equal to, this is just less than. And Fahad, let me know I got the name right. So great. That is better than getting the rule right in my opinion. But either way, these are the 2 ways that I would write the rule for being very specific with 2,700 or wanting players, only limiting players below 2,700 and below. So let me know if you have any questions on that. And we are going to keep it rolling. Got it. Gotcha. Thank you. So glad we got that worked out there. Question here from Franklin. Franklin said, can you explain the geometric mean and give an example on it? Franklin, this is a good question. I actually just got done recording a video explaining geomean and going into a lot of detail in regards to it. So what I would do, and just so you guys know, this is always a great resource to go and find stuff. Let me just pull it up really quickly here. So my assumption is probably by the end of the day that this video will make it into our frequently asked questions. So not reported problem, sorry. If you go over to the drop down in settings, you go over to help, right? This is going to bring up support at sabersim.com/support. And then if you go down here to our frequently asked questions, you go to this view more, and then you can type in anything you want. So you can type in product ownership. And I don't know exactly what we have here. It looks like we don't have anything, which is why I just recorded the video today. But I just recorded a lengthy video talking about product ownership and exactly what it does. So I will give you guys like an overview of what that video is right now, especially since we have some time. But over the weekend, that video should get uploaded. If anybody ever needs to reference it, or go over it again or listen to it again, you can find that type of material over in this sabersim.com/support or support.sabersim.com. So just a note for everybody watching. But yeah, let's talk about Geomean. It is fresh in my mind. I will tell you guys that. I spent like a good chunk of time this morning, thoroughly reviewing it, understanding it, and making sure that I could put out a solid video for you guys here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull this up here. We should have plenty of time to talk about this. So, and let me blow this up. Make sure you guys can see this. That should help quite a bit. I'm hoping. So if anybody's having any trouble reading that, let me know, and I could try and zoom in a little more. Right. So first things first. How is product ownership different from sum ownership, right? If we're going to talk about geometric mean, we got to talk about product ownership first, because that is an input into Geomean, right? So what is the difference between product ownership and sum ownership? By the way, I made all these notes. This has not been reviewed by my video has not been reviewed by anyone on the team. So if I messed up, I haven't heard back as to if I messed up, but I'm pretty sure all of this is very, very accurate. How is product ownership different from sum ownership, right? The best example, if you have two groups of 4 players, let's say we have 4 players in a lineup, just to keep it simple. The ownerships for group A are 40%, 10%, 40%, 10%. If group B, the ownerships are 20%, 30%, 20%, and 30%. All right. So if you add these up, the 40-10, 40-10, and the 20-30, 20-30, both of them add up to 100% sum ownership. So if you were to look at the sum ownerships, you would think those are the same. However, if you were to multiply these values together, 40% is technically 0.4, but I know some people are going to like go in their calculator and just do 40 times 10 times 40 times 10, which will get you ultimately 160,000 here. So I wrote it out 2 ways. If you do the decimal version, 0.4 times 0.1 times 0.4 times 0.1, that will come out to this small number, 0.0016. And then if you do the same thing for group B, that 0.2 times 0.3 times 0.2 times 0.3, what that number will come out to is 0.0036. Both small numbers. However, the product ownership of group B is much larger than group A, almost twice as big, right? 2 zeros, 1 6, 2 zeros, 3 6, right? So more than double in that instance. What that means is that, although the sum ownerships are the same, group B combination is much more likely to be owned than group A's is, with a lower product ownership there. So how does that fit into Geomean, right? Where do we go from there? So the way it fits into Geomean is the formula for Geomean is product ownership to the power of 1 over n, where n is the number of players in a lineup. I realize it's quite a math lesson here. It took me a little bit, to work through all this. So if anybody has any questions along the way here, just let me know, and I can review any aspects of this. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the product ownership from group A and B and then put that to the power of 1 over n. I'm doing this example based on an NBA Classic slate on DraftKings where there are 8 players in a lineup. So I'm going to take the product ownership to the power of 1 over 8, which is 8 players in a lineup. That comes out to 0.45. If you go over to the app, this is going to be displayed as a percentage or it looks like a whole number. So it would just be 45 in the app. And then the Geomean of group B will be 0.49 or 49% there. So the way that I checked this was that I went over to this NBA DraftKings slate. And what I did was I took I don't think this is the lineup that I built earlier. Maybe it was this one. So what I did is I came in and I multiplied all of these percentages together, which I did here. So then I have the 0.195, which would be 19.5% times 22.4% owned. Like that is what these decimal values are. Comes out to a really, really small number, right? We're looking at 6 zeros and then 19. By using Geomean, what you can do is make that number more usable. And that's how we go from these really small numbers to this number that is much more usable. So in my example here, I have product ownership to the power of 1/8 comes out to 14.5, a much more usable number. I mean, it's technically 0.1447. If you do it as a percentage, you just round and then round to 7, round up from 4 to 5, 14.5%, right? So then if I go back to SaberSim here, and what I can do is, if I'm on the pro plan, what I can do is I can create a custom metric and make a Geomean summary stat here. I did not mean to do that. So this lineup has a Geomean 14.5. This is the lineup I demonstrated. So my math is correct in this instance. The great thing about that is, one, you can see the Geomean of every lineup, and you can apply filters based on that, right? So let's say you want to use Geomean for NFL Showdown, and you want to estimate the number of dupes in a lineup in a contest using Geomean, right? The way you would do that is you put your number of requested dupes divided by the number of entries in a contest to the power of 1/n, where n is the number of players in a lineup. So as an example, if you want 5 dupes in a 20,000 entry contest, showdown contest on DraftKings, in a captain format, there are 6 players in a lineup. So what I did was I did 5 dupes divided by 20,000. So this is the number of dupes that I'm trying to shoot for or around. And then this is the number of entries in the contest to the power of 1 divided by the number of players in the lineup, which is 6. This gives me a value of 0.25. So if I were to go to NFL here, and I were to go over to Showdown, which is what we were talking about, and I run a build, and maybe I don't want to play any lineups above that threshold, right? So what I would do is I would come in here, if I have my custom metric, I can now sort by this metric. So if I go to filters, I go to add filter, I'm going to go to hide lineups with Geomean greater than, and I'm going to put 25 because that is the number that we came up with in our example here. That is what we are shooting. Those are lineups that we do not want to play. We think are going to be too highly duplicated. I can save that filter. What it's going to do is it's going to take every lineup where the Geomean is over 25 and move it into the trash. So those lineups cannot get into my lineups that I take with me into my contests. So that is comparing, some ownership to product ownership. That is how product ownership fits into Geomean. That is how to use Geomean to estimate duplicates. If you're not on the pro plan, right, and you want to use Geomean as an input, right, what I would do is I would go over to lineup rules. I would go add new rule. I would go aggregate, and then I would say my own geometric mean no more than 25. So what this is going to do is you're going to tell the builder, like, hey, do not build any lineups where the Geomean is greater than 25. Anybody on any plan can do this and has access to this rule. So I would say the only thing to be careful about when using this rule is that, make sure you're checking your exposures and make it so to get to this Geomean value, right? What SaberSim is going to have to do is play a lot of lower owned guys, right? So I think right here is a great example. 20% Christian McCaffrey, we have none of him. And the main reason I think we have none of him is because we are getting rid of the high Geomean lineups. He is high owned for a reason, right? He's a really strong play with a high projection. So SaberSim is going to say, hey, I'm not going to play any of him to get to this Geomean value. So if you are using a rule like this, I would be very careful and very sure to review my exposures and adjust accordingly to make sure that, my exposures are not way off just because I am now using this rule and it is jamming in all of these low owned captains. Do I really want to play two lineups of DJ Dallas? Probably not. And I probably want some Christian McCaffrey in this instance. So if you're using it, be careful. But that is Geomean product ownership in a nutshell. So hope that helps, Franklin. And let me know if you guys have any follow-up on that. But all right, see a couple more questions here. I am going to get rid of all of this math and get SaberSim pulled back up here and get to a couple more questions that have rolled in. All right, question from Brad. What is the best way to control exposures in, say, NBA? Projection, uniques, min-max exposure. So, Brad, what I would say, let's go back to NBA here and let's talk about this a little bit. If you are concerned, or you want more exposure to a player, frankly, I would probably handle that in the post build. So in general, when I am coming in here to the post build, first thing I'm trying to do is decrease the correlation between my lineups and my set by using min uniques. Min uniques is going to organically adjust exposures the best way, to accommodate the min uniques and keeping the most exposure to what SaberSim perceives to be the best plays on a slate, right? So by using min uniques, you're going to get some weeding out of players, and SaberSim is you're putting SaberSim to the test, right? You're making SaberSim, answer some hard questions like, hey, if three players have to be different, you got to make a decision and you got to choose which ones you feel are the most important, right? And I think that's a good thing ultimately, because it will make your lineup more diverse. It'll kind of show you who are the best plays on the slate, in my opinion. So that's one way I would do it. And then if you have some takes, you have some convictions, you've done some research, and maybe you've made some notes of some guys you want to get to, first way you could do that, adjust min and max exposures. I would always suggest, doing any diversification min uniques first, and then making some final tweaks to ownership as like toward the end of your process, as you're getting closer to the final set of lineups that you want. So you can do that with min and max exposures. Say you're having trouble doing that. Say, SaberSim is not valuing a player as highly as you are valuing a player, and you're having trouble getting to enough lineups with that player in it. What I would do is I would adjust their projection in the home screen. Go through it without the projection adjustment first. If you just have some takes that you want to act on, but and use your min and max exposures. If you're having trouble doing that, then I would revert to going to the projection and making a projection adjustment, a couple points. I think we talk about 10% exposure adjustment in either direction, and seeing what that does and running a new build and seeing how much that affects how often that player is now coming up in your lineups. You could use, your top exposures, but then you could also compare the pool exposure, right? Maybe I have somebody like Keldon Johnson. I think he's going to play really well. He's in 14% of my pool. I give him a 10% bump, and then, I run a new build and maybe he's in, 100% of my lineups in my pool, and that's just way too much, right? So I might walk that projection adjustment down a little bit and then rerun a new build. There's nothing wrong with, making adjustments, seeing what happens, running new builds, trying to refine that change, and then figuring out where it is best set, and then using that new build to be the one that you take with you be the one that you pick lineups from to take with you into your contest. So definitely kind of a back and forth there. Don't be afraid to run multiple builds. Don't be afraid to get stuck in a build and have to start over. All of that is part of the process. We used to say build, review, revise. I think that is still applicable in some situations for sure. Franklin said, thanks for the explanation on Geomean. Yeah, happy to explain it. It's fresh on my mind. So I'm sure you guys got a very, very thorough answer, more than I would have been able to do on another day, kind of off the cuff. But yeah, caught me on a good day. So good day to ask that one. All right. Zugs said, how do I keep exposures balanced post build? Zugs, your question was really similar to Brad's. So hope you guys both got something out of that. If either of you have any follow-up, just let me know. All right. Eddie Farmer said, can you dumb down the SaberSim sliders, in particular the correlation one? Should I try to correlate my showdown lineups based on 1 stud from each game, 3-3 or 4-2 stacks. Okay, so let's talk about correlation. Let's talk about I'm gonna talk about NFL, Eddie. If you want to talk about something different, just let me know. But looking at NFL here, right? I think what it is important to remember is that, excuse me 1 second. Just had to clear my throat. I think it's important to remember when we are simulating the games, right? At 0-0-10 sliders, what we are doing is we are simulating a game one time, and then we are building a lineup based on whatever the highest scoring optimal was in that one simulation, right? Especially with correlation and ownership fade turned off. The great thing about simulating games is that we will be able to account for natural correlation. When pass catcher catches a touchdown, his quarterback probably threw to him, right? And he is probably very correlated to that specific player without any additional correlation metric being applied here, without any artificial correlation multiplier boosting that correlation component with those players. And we can see that, right? If you were to click on somebody like DK Metcalf, we are going to see his range of outcomes in the simulations, and then we are going to see his correlations, right? His highest correlation by, no surprise, is Geno Smith, his quarterback, which you see this huge correlation at 0.43, and then you see a big drop off to the next highest correlated player, right? So that all makes sense to me. This all comes from the sims. This is not artificially boosted, right? When this correlation slider goes up, what we are doing is we are adding additional correlation to the projections as they come out the other side. We use upside correlation, which basically means, we do not care who DK Metcalf is correlated to when he has a really bad game, right? We only care who DK Metcalf is correlated to when he has a high upside game, when he scores his, 85th percentile, 95th percentile, 99th percentile, all of those high score games. Those are the correlations that we want to capture and we want to account for when building your lineups. So upside correlation is really what the correlation slider is taking into account. I think as far as, what you need to do with Showdown, right? We have the correlation slider off by default, and that is because, we want to really value those single game optimals, right? The simulations do a great job of capturing enough correlation. In main slates and classic slates where there are a lot of games on the slate, you don't need an optimal to win, right? So in those scenarios, we are more comfortable increasing the correlation slider, trying to artificially create those bigger stacks for you. But I think in something like NFL Showdown, that is not as needed as much. And I would more focus on reviewing my lineups in the post build, seeing if the game scripts make sense to me. And, maybe you think it's going to be like a shootout. You can adjust team totals in the home screen. What that is going to do, maybe you don't think this is a 10-point spread, right? Maybe you think it's like really close, like 26-24. If you were to come in here, increase Seattle's game total to 24, what we're going to do is we are going to discount sims where Seattle scores a low amount of points until the new mean Seattle team total is now 24, which you have it set to, right? So that is one way to add value. Another way to that I would look at is look at these lineups and kind of spot check them, make sure they make sense. Look at the ownerships of the players. Debo with Debo captain with Purdy, and then we have 4 players on the opposing side for Seattle. Like I could definitely see that game script working out, right? We see something similar here with a Metcalf captain. We got Geno, we got Lockett, Parkinson, and then we have 2 position players with no quarterback from San Francisco. So maybe like some spot checking. I don't think there is too much to do with adjusting sliders for NFL Showdown specifically, in my opinion. I did miss this from Eddie. Eddie said, would you use the NBA Showdown from last night, Lakers and Mavs? 2 studs were Luka and LeBron. Yeah, we can talk about that. That's no problem. So I'm going to hop over here to last night. Gonna hop over wrong showdown. Actually, this is tonight. So I'm going to go back to yesterday. going to look at this. I think one thing that you could definitely do is that not everybody playing these contests is building with a with SaberSim, right? With a simulator, with something that is simulating the games. A lot of people are using traditional optimizers. A lot of people are, also building by hand. What you can do to replicate what their lineups are going to look like. Come in here, turn the sim diversity off. What you're going to do by that is you are going to use the average projection, right? So instead of bucketing the sims or randomly sampling them and taking different outcomes for Luca in different game sims, we are just going to use the average projection here. And what you can do by this is you can see what a traditional optimizer is basically going to spit out for most people, trying to solve a knapsack problem, trying to pack in as many projected points as possible here. So this is one way to do some research, try to figure out what the field is going to do on a given night, right? And I'm just going to make 2 projection adjustments here so we can see our lineups. I would probably open this up to the entire pool of 500 here and see where all of the players are really going to come from. Looks like Dwight Powell is probably underpriced here, was underpriced here. So we were seeing quite a bit of him. And as like our highest leverage play, didn't love LeBron, was fairly neutral on Luka. I bet if you were to just kind of jam in Luka, I'm sure that would be fine. There would be plenty of lineups to do that, 266 lineups. So I think, Luka captain, obviously really popular here. Some leverage plays with Dwight Powell. You can come in here, look at the leverage plays, see what traditional optimizers are spitting out, and then go back to the home screen and then run a build on default settings at 0010, and then see what this looks like. Compare the two. Make some notes. What is the field playing? What is SaberSim saying? Is SaberSim in agreement? Is SaberSim in disagreement? Does SaberSim in its simulations think that the leverage plays are the same or different? Is it looking elsewhere? You can compare stack types, right? Like you were talking about. We could come into this after this build runs. I'll let this finish first, but what I also want to do is compare the stack types, right? What is a cache? What is a 000 build spitting out for stack types that a 0010 build is spitting out, and how are those different, right? So I'm going to go back to this build. In our 500 lineups, seeing a lot of 4-2 stacks here. And, you can also see who is being used in those stacks, right? So 5-1s, basically all Dallas. 4-2s, mostly Dallas, right? So the Dallas onslaught was really popular here. I'm actually surprised. I think the team totals here were, the spread is 2.5 points according to this. Might have been like 3, but yeah, really close spread. Really surprised to see the Dallas onslaught happening over here, right? If we were to come and compare, what are we seeing here? We're seeing something similar with the 5 stacks, something similar with the 4 stacks. SaberSim is fairly. Oh wait, actually I don't have this open up to the whole pool. So I'm going to open this up to all 500 lineups. When you're doing this research, always suggest looking at as many lineups as you possibly can, right? So I'm going to come into the 5 stacks, little less, I think, than we saw on the other build. Still a ton of 4-2 in favor of Dallas. So it looks like SaberSim is like fairly in agreement with a lot of those plays. That doesn't mean you can't get to them, right? I mean, there is still, 44 lineups with for about 9% that are a Lakers 4-2, right? And that is the rate that they're coming up in the sim. So maybe that's the rate you want to play them, right? If I come down to 20, we're not using any of those, right? But maybe you think that, based on your research and your cast research, that a lot of people are going to be playing Dallas 4-2s, probably jamming it in. I'm not going to play a ton of Lakers 4-2s, but I'm going to play them at a rate that they're optimal and get some exposure to those lineups, right? I probably would not play this 5-1. There's only one in our entire pool of 500. Doesn't seem like a good play to me. But I'm comfortable playing a couple of these Lakers 4-2s, especially since they're coming up in the Sims, right? So just try to find ways to get different. I wouldn't do anything with the sliders, and instead I would try to figure out, a little bit more how to exploit the field. What direction is the field going? What is the field thinking? How can I use SaberSim to get off of those type of plays? And what does SaberSim think about how often I should pivot away in that instance? But good question there. All right. Next question. Franklin said, "Will you still use mini uniques with the Geomean?" Frankly, I am not using. Well, let me say this: when I am using Geomean, I am using it mostly for showdowns, and in showdowns, I am not using mini uniques. I am not somebody who uses mini. I'm not somebody who uses product ownership or Geomean for NBA like large slates or classic slates. I know some people do, right? I know some people care about the sum ownership of their lineups or the product ownership of their lineups in even a large classic slate, right? That's not me. So by nature, I am not using mini uniques with Geomean. Um, I'm sure there are plenty of people who are. That's a good Discord question, right? A lot of people will see that. Depending on what sport you're playing. Maybe you're playing NBA, right? Throw it in the NBA channel. See what feedback people have. See what people think. A lot of activity in those channels, and that sounds like a good conversation starter type question. But specifically for Showdown, the reason I'm not using mini uniques is because there are only 6 players in a lineup, right? So as opposed to 8 or 9, 9 on a NFL main slate, 8 on an NBA main slate, just less roster positions overall. I think in Showdown, you're hunting for the optimal more often than not. So by applying mini uniques to 2, you could essentially block yourself from getting to the optimal if it's a 1-for-1 swap. So that's something that matters a lot to me. I've talked about this with Jordan and mentioned it on the stream. Jordan likes to use mini uniques for Showdown. I don't know if he's using a Geomean calculation or not. He's okay with that give and take, and as I feel the opposite about that. So a lot of different ways to play and use these tools. I would imagine there is a positive EV way to use them both in conjunction. All right. 1 Minute Viral said, "What's a good default setting for exposures for NBA?" Yeah. So, what I will say is that, I would really advise against hard and fast rules on any, for any sport, right? What is good on one sport or what is good on one day for a sport might be bad on another day for a sport. I think something that we talk about often is using team stack rules on a night-to-night basis without slate context, right? Some days there are going to be huge slates where, all of Miami is sitting, and you might want to play more 4 stacks of Miami and let those into your lineups. But, your hard and fast rule does not allow for more than 3 players from any team. So just an example of, be careful with these hard and fast rules. I think the best way to manage exposures is 1, by applying mini uniques here in the post build, and then 2, by kind of spot checking what these exposures are. Is this too much leverage for you? Do you not have enough exposure to what you perceive to be the best plays? You could apply the mini uniques and then still go in and make adjustments here as like a fine tuning type of process, right? So that is something that I like to do more often than not. But a lot of different ways to go about it. No really wrong or right way to manage exposures. I would say probably best to not do too much tinkering. I think less tinkering is probably better than more in this instance. All right, moving on to the next question here. And Patrick said, late swap for MMA available for this weekend. Patrick, no, we have not built out the late swap MMA tool. Frankly, we're very uncertain that it's going to stay long term. Have seen a lot of issues with it, with start times and who is determining what the start times are or when fights are locking. I think there's a lot of uncertainty or disorganization around that specifically. So it makes it really hard for us to know when something is locked. Sometimes they open a slate, and then if they open it and you make a swap, then your entries get disqualified. Like, it is just like the weirdest thing, the way that they are doing this. So right now, no support for MMA late swap. If you are playing late swap, I would really suggest playing less lineups, playing more elevator type stuff where you can manage the late swaps on your phone or by hand. But I would just be really careful with, just because you can make a swap, they might disqualify you for it, which is just like the most bizarre thing to me. So be really careful, be plugged into when you can or cannot make swaps. Patrick said, I noticed we have support for COD. That's interesting. I know we don't have Sims for it. We might have it up in the app. It looks like we have it up in the app, and it looks like we have the slates loaded. So I'm assuming you could come in here and upload custom projections for it. If you have custom projections, getting your projections from somewhere else, you could come in here. We have the players, we have the team, we have the teams. I'm not too familiar with the COD streets, but we have the teams in here. So all the player information and salaries are all loaded up. So if you have custom stuff, you could come in here and build for COD. It seems. All right. Eddie said, thanks. Happy to answer your question to the best of my ability, Eddie. And then Marky Mark said, does the projected score play a role in regards to custom projections uploaded in the Sims? Okay, this is a good question. Going to jump back to NBA and talk about it in relation to this sport. So projected score, right? So basically, if we have Sabonis here, right, and his projection is 53.78, if you come in here and you have custom projections that say Sabonis should actually be 56.78 points, which is 3 points higher, what we are going to do is we are going to take his entire range of outcomes, and then we are going to shift his distribution up by 3 points in that instance. So for every time he scores 50, he now scores 53. For every time he scores 60, he now scores 63. So what that does is it raises his floor and also raises his ceiling. His distribution stays the same pretty much. So that still allows us to take into account, his range of outcomes, allows us to still be able to bucket the Sims and use the Sims the same as we would use it at a different projection. That distribution is just higher. So he has a much higher floor, much higher 99th percentile, much higher upside in general. All right. Uncrabby Cabby said, hey, Andrew, other than Saber Score, have you found any combined metrics that consistently pull the top lineups from your pool? Frankly, I haven't done like any back testing on this or downloaded CSVs and or like tried different things. But I'll just tell you like what I tend to use. Usually on like smaller slates, I would say anything like, I don't know, 4 to 5 games or below. I'm pretty happy sticking with Saber Score. I think that, on bigger slates, 11 gamers, 13 gamers, I'm more inclined to build with percentiles and just really shoot for upside in that situation. I've bounced back and forth between like 95th, 99th on a given day. I think just building for upside in those situations, where there are just so many games on the slate, the optimal's unlikely to be found. The number of lineups you could build is millions and millions of lineups, as opposed to like those 2-game slates, right? Where duplication is important, being different from the field is important. I think Saber Score comes into play a lot more. There's nothing wrong with using Saber Score in a large slate. It is the default sorting method. It's just something I've messed around with and tried. If we're talking about trying different things, they're here for a reason, right? We put them in here because people want to see the upside of their lineups without these correlation and ownership metrics applied on a lineup level. That's totally okay. Ownership is still being accounted for. Correlation is still being accounted for with the sliders. Maybe you think that, those aspects are not as important on like a 13-game slate, and you just want the highest upside outcomes. That's kind of why they're there. That's sort of my reasoning for experimenting with them. I haven't done any testing, like downloading my pool with, Saber Score, downloaded my pool with percentiles, and then compared the two to actuals over a large period of time. Sounds like an interesting experiment if that is in your skill set to do. And if you do it, come back here and let me know what you found. But good question there, Uncrabby Cabby. All right. That looks like our last question. Catching up here in the Discord. We are all caught up. And it looks like we are all caught up in the YouTube chat. Had a lot of live questions. Thank you all for joining and participating. Hope you all got your questions answered. If you guys didn't, throw something in the Office Hours channel over the weekend. That will give us some questions to answer on our Monday show. We will be back on Monday, the 16th, 2 p.m. Eastern for our next show. Last question here from Marky Mark. Projected score as in building those lineups, then selecting the projected score over Saber Score with my custom projections uploaded. Marky Mark. Okay, we're talking about lineup sorting here. So what Marky Mark is saying, so all this is going to do is that it is going to take the projected score for each player in the lineup, add it up, and then rank it descending, right? So like this is the first highest projected score lineup. This is the second highest projected score lineup. And then it is just going to go down the list. As long as your custom projections are the ones that we are using to build. So for instance, whatever is in this my projection column is the projections that we ultimately use to build your lineups, right? So if you are uploading and saving sets, make sure that you are choosing the set that you want to use. So whatever set you choose on the dropdown, that will be the set that we use to build your lineups. If you save it, right? If you just upload it and then all these columns are like red and green with your new values, those are the values that we're going to use. So whatever is in this column is what we are going to display here on the left-hand side of the screen under projection. And in the actual lineups, whatever this projection is in the column descriptors, that will also reflect the value being used in the projection column. So we will add up your custom projections as well to come up with this projected score to sort descending. So hope that answers your question there. But all right, everybody, I will see you guys on Monday, 2 p.m. Eastern. If you guys have any questions over the weekend, the team is always around in Discord. We have weekend support. We know sports are going on, Saturday, Sunday. So throw a message in the support channel. The team will be around to get your questions answered. So until then, I will see you all. Good luck in your contest and take care.